So I want to share a little bit about why God commands us to rest, why rest is important, and why there is even a Sabbath in the Bible, a fancy term for a rest day. Quick little background on my story. I spent years guiding and doing outdoor work in my early 20s and through my 20s, working for tourism and outdoor education programs and even wilderness therapy programs. The last program I worked for, we did 46-day expeditions, which were incredibly challenging. And we worked with some of the toughest kids in the country, kids that even other wilderness therapy programs would not take because they were violent. So I realized in that season of my life how important rest was. I discovered that working 46 days nonstop was a microcosm of what many people's lives were like. And I was determined that I was not going to be one of those people. And I was able to practice rest from what I'd learned in that season of my life for a number of years, especially starting into entrepreneurship on my own. Well, you discover what you're made of when the fire gets turned up and the heat gets turned up. So in my life, when I got married, and we had a baby out of the gate and we started 3 different businesses, the heat got turned up in my life. Honestly, I didn't handle it as well as I thought I would. The fact was, with those 3 businesses out of the gate, getting pregnant and being married, figuring out communication and other facets of living. One of the businesses we started was a food truck business, and quickly that fell in my lap to manage and run because my husband's contracting business took off pretty quickly after that. And so in the early years, we actually started with a late night food cart, and we would run that downtown for the late nights on the weekends. And we did a lot of festivals and events on the weekends. And so we had late nights and early mornings. If I was not running the food cart, I was training someone to do it, or I was managing it since it was a startup. Those first few years, we were not diligent to take as many days off as we should have. And as things grew, the responsibilities grew, and we were a little better about taking big chunks of time off when we could. But as far as more of a rhythm of taking a Sabbath weekly, it really wasn't in what we were doing. And so we'd often work very hard in the summers and take a little time off in the winters, or a lot of time as we figured out how to do later in our businesses. But the challenge was, after we had our fire about 6 years ago, in the pressure of rebuilding, pressure we probably put on ourselves rather than putting on God's plate, but we probably carried more of that than we needed to. And we had a second child. Somewhere in there, we had a couple puppies. You spread that out between, 2 kids, a couple puppies, some different businesses. And I can now look back on the first 10 years of our marriage and realize that I was pretty sleep deprived. During that time, I knew I was struggling with sleep. I've always been a great sleeper, but I wasn't getting the sleep that I needed. And one of the things I've always kept in the back of my mind was the fact that in war, sleep deprivation is used as torture. I really pondered how the enemy, I believe there's not only a God of the Bible, but there is an enemy, goes by many different names, but essentially is out to steal, kill, and destroy in our life. And that enemy is against us. If God is for us, then the enemy is against us. And I really began to ponder how the enemy might use sleep deprivation in my life and in other people's lives like torture, to wear us down and to bring us to our knees in survival and kind of imprisoned, as opposed to being overcomers or victorious. Of course, the Bible, there's lots of places where God speaks about promises of making us lie down in green pastures and restoring our soul and learning to sleep through the storms of life. I guess it's not exactly a passage, but I remember somebody talking about how if Jesus could sleep through the storm on the boat when he was there with the disciples, how much more should we be doing that? That's what he modeled. And so I remember somebody saying, you only have authority over the storms that you can sleep through. And so through the years, that's kind of been my journey looking at it. And recently I came across a book. I'll give him a shameless plug, The Circadian Code. I'm not sure if that's going to come up on the video where you can read it, but The Circadian Code by Sachin Panda. Lose weight, supercharge your energy, and transform your health from morning to midnight. So this book was pretty profound to read. And when I was finished, it became clear to me that I have been completely sleep deprived for the last 10 years of my life. And so I've spent the last couple months really doubling down on rest. I thought I was working on rest last year, but I have decided to work with my circadian rhythms and harness those in a better way and really try to align my life with the way we were made and created to live. And so there's a lot of tips and strategies and some things I knew about, how melatonin is produced and how technology can inhibit that at night. But there was a lot about even when stopping eating can help you go to sleep and when your digestive system is kicking on. So there was some other keys that I found, and I want to say there was probably 6 or 8 things in there that I realized that I could start applying in a different way in my life to double down on sleep. Now, this is not foreign to me. I've been really aware of sleep, and I've been pursuing this aspect in my life, and I think rest is something really profound. And so if you were to look at my bookshelf, you would find other books like The Sleep Revolution by Ariana Huffington, and lots of baby books on sleep for babies, The Happiest Baby on the Block, and I got another one here, Healthy Sleep Habits, Happy Child. Those were pivotal to teaching my kids how to sleep. Another really amazing book, When I Relax, I Feel Guilty. So a little bit more about just general rest. And then a new one my husband got, which has also sparked some of this video, Take the Day Off by Robert Morris. I'm only into that a little bit. But I've just really been studying this. It's become kind of a theme last year and again this year. And I'll definitely put those books in the comments or in the show notes so you can go take a look at them when you have time. But I'll tell you, if you want to live long and have not just a happy life, but a joyful life and be successful, it's really important to recognize that there's some ancient wisdoms for living that have stood the test of time. And I find it fascinating for all the books I love and how wonderful my bookshelf is and how many books I've read through the years. One of the best-selling books of all time, or let me say it this way, the greatest and best-selling book of all time every year, year after year, is simply the Bible. Since the Gutenberg press printed the first pages off the Bible, every year, without fail to my knowledge, the Bible has been the #1 printed book in all of history. Now, of course, the New York Times won't tell you that, and there's a lot of secular sources that just eliminate the Bible off the list and list everything else. But without fail, the Bible has been at the top of that list. And I think it's been there because it is a tool for living. I love, if you don't know much about the Bible, it's made up of about 66 books, if I got that right. And it's almost like a mini library in your hands. There's books on poetry and history. There's books there's biographies and there are letters in there. And there's books that are prophetic and full of incredible imagery, kind of the Apocrypha and revelations that people talk about. But there's other books that just chronicle the history of a group of people and the story of God in their life. And the lessons that you find, some of my favorite books to kind of study over and over are the ones called the wisdom books. And so there's 3 or 4 or 5 books, depending on how you count them, known as the wisdom books. And Proverbs, the book of Proverbs is one of those. And I love reading a chapter of Proverbs every day and chewing on it because Proverbs, the book of Proverbs is all about exactly what I'm here sharing on a regular basis. It's about finding success, bottom line. It's finding the good path in life, that's not always the easy one, but it's the rich path, the rewarding path in life. And the fact is, that path is not the one that most people go down. Most people go down the easy path. And when it comes to success, what appears to be easy and the path that everyone's going down is not ultimately the most rewarding in life. And so one of the things I've really had to step back and recalibrate is this idea of rest. If you're living apart from God and in a secular way, then working, I find there's either people, it's on one or the other extreme. There's either kind of the hedonistic lifestyle where you really don't work and it's all play, and the other side where it's all work and no play. And there is just almost this slave driving taskmaster that is mentally driving you, whether it's the voices in your head, or whether it's bosses and people that are kind of slave driving you, or the bills and the debt and the slavery. You are in a system to provide and to keep up with the Joneses, or, to stay in the rat race, so to speak. And so in Take the Day Off, the author writes about living with margin, and he quotes another writer in their book on margin, called a guy named Dr. Swenson, or Svensson, Swenson. And I love this quote. It's really thought-provoking. But marginless living, basically, marginless is being 30 minutes late to the doctor's office because you're 20 minutes late getting out of the bank, because you were 10 minutes late dropping off your kids at school, because the car ran out of gas 2 blocks from the gas station and you forgot your wallet. Margin, on the other hand, is having breath left at the top of the staircase, money left at the end of the month, and sanity left at the end of adolescence. Marginless is the baby crying and the phone ringing at the same time. Margin is grandma taking the baby for the afternoon. Marginless is being asked to carry a load 5 pounds heavier than you can lift. Margin is a friend to carry half the burden. Marginless is not having time to finish the book you're reading on stress. Margin is having the time to read it twice. So how do we live with more margin? It's another version of rest. Why take a day off? Why live with a Sabbath? Well, those are things I want to explore on some deeper levels in the days ahead. But the bottom line is, we are working ourselves to death all over the world, in America and all over the world. What's really scary is that there are words for death by overwork in other cultures. In the Chinese language, I don't know how to pronounce this, but it's gualaosi, and in Korean it's guarosa. We don't have those words in English, and hopefully they don't enter our language for a long time, or maybe never. But the fact that there are words in other languages for people working themselves to death, and this is voluntarily at jobs, employed, is terrifying, I think, in the sense that this is the culture, this is what we're raising our kids in. And technology has this incredible capacity to connect us and unite us. But for many people, it also affords this tether where it's really hard to turn things off and to distance themselves. And so learning to turn your cell phone off, learning to leave it behind, learning to take a day without technology, learning to take a day in the woods and the wilderness, never mind more. How much more valuable is that now than it's ever been before? And so I'm working through some amazing stuff in building rest into my life, more margin into my life. I think the bottom line, a friend of mine drove home this point recently. The reason to do this is because when you're in survival mode, your vision becomes tunnel vision. It is ultra focused on surviving to get out of that situation. And that is an incredible strategy that we're hardwired for, of this ability to focus. But when we are so focused that we cannot take a step back and see the bigger picture, that we can't find ourselves in the greatness of it all and begin to get the peripheral vision, we miss out on a lot. And I think taking rest days, forcing ourselves to rest, even when you feel like you can't rest, you don't have any way to rest, it it creates this space in your life where you can shift from being ultra focused to taking in and having perspective on your situation. And when there's perspective, there's an incredible ability to get creative and see new possibilities and dream and imagine and connect with other people. And I love the capacity we have to focus on things and eliminate distractions and zero in on something. And there are times that extreme focus is what we need. But we also need to live in such a way that we can take it all in and we can look for possibility and we can dream and we can imagine. Because if we can't, we can never change our future. And so I admonish you. It's a pretty strong word, I think. But more than encourage, I mean, I challenge you and I provoke you. If you're on this channel and you're here for any amount of time, or you've stumbled on this video and this resonates with you, you have to find a way to rest. And learning to do that in the intensity, and like, you have to learn it wherever you're at. It's never going to get easier. It's never going to get easier to learn how to rest. It's never going to get any easier to learn how to take a day off, or to get off the clock, or to I don't think letting your guard down is the right word, but finding and choosing to access peace. So I leave you with this today, with hope and prayer that you will learn to rest in a new way, and that I will see comments in the days ahead of how learning to rest has changed your life. I'll see you on the next one.